Like half the country, I paid $25 last night to see Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, a movie that I have some thoughts about that I'd love to share with you if you'll indulge me. Um, in anticipation of the movie, I was one of those people who the day the trailer came out, the first trailer came out, I was super excited and was watching it a bunch of times. Um, Also in anticipation of the movie coming out, I'd heard that the movie was and is a loose adaptation or an inspiration of taken from Thomas Pynchon's novel Vineland. And so in anticipation of seeing the movie, I read maybe a couple months ago. I read Pynchon's Vineland, and I have a I mean, I did a review of that novel, and I'll link it up top. And I'm one of the I think in the minority that thinks Vineland is a masterpiece. I love that book. Um, I have not read all of Pynchon's novels, but of those that I've read, it's my favorite, and I love it because of just the human story, the very like human family story at the core of it, and I get much more into that in that other video. But I actually wouldn't recommend reading the novel in preparation for seeing the movie because the movie and the novel are so different. I think for me, I was talking to a couple of friends about it. I think for me, the I had all of these expectations from reading the novel that when I saw the movie, I was sort of unable to kind of separate in my head. Um, and to a certain extent, it didn't spoil my appreciation of the movie, but it definitely colored my appreciation of the movie a little bit. It was in the back of my mind as I was watching the movie. So I wouldn't recommend reading the novel in anticipation of the movie of watching the movie. I did like the movie though. The movie was the performances in it great. I think DiCaprio's performance he does has a there's a great balance. He his character in the novel is Zoid Wheeler, but in the movie he is Bob Ferguson, and DiCaprio does a great job of portraying that character. I have some critiques that I'll say for later. Um, same with the with his wife slash the mother of his child. She is Perfidia Beverly Hills in the movie, played by Tayana Taylor, and in the novel she is Fernesi Gates. A great performance. Really, I think captures most of what Pynchon's trying to do. But again, I have some gripes about it. I'm not going to give you a summary in this video of the movie. You can watch a million other videos on what the movie's about. Um, but I just wanted to tell you some things I liked. I'm not going to critique the movie from the position of it didn't include enough of the book. Um, when movies, a movie is a very different thing than a novel, so to try to include everything from a novel is a mistake. I mean, inevitably, I think a director is going to have to leave things out. Um, and there are plenty of cases. I can name three where off the top of my head, where a movie has, I think, surpassed the novel by not doing not trying to be the novel. Um, Godfather is a perfect example. I think the movie is infinitely better than the book. Um, in some ways, I think American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. I think the movie is better than the book. And I also think, perhaps controversially, that Pynchon's Inherent Vice. I think the movie, also directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, I think that movie actually brings out some more of the humanity that's in the novel than the novel itself does. So I actually really liked Inherent Vice. It's in like my top three, I think, of Paul Thomas Anderson movies. So I'm not going to criticize the movie for not being the novel, especially because it's not a tight adaptation. It is an inspiration. So I'm not going to um, critique it on those grounds. Things I liked about the movie, though, the pacing of it, the frenetic pacing of it. This is really Paul Thomas Anderson doing his take on an action movie. It's from start to finish. Really, there's just, you're on the edge of your seat, very tense. Um, there are a bunch of moments in the movie, I won't ruin them, but where you just you know something terrible is going to happen, and it's how how Anderson really like telegraphs that and foreshadows that just cinematically is brilliant. There's a moment, I won't ruin it at the end, but there's a moment at the end where like I just knew something horrible was going to happen, and it turned out I was right. But there was just but Anderson had laid the groundwork cinematically so that we as the audience just knew what was coming. So I love the pacing of it. The pacing is amplified. That frenetic pacing is amplified, and the tension is amplified, and the stakes are really raised by Johnny Greenwood's fantastic soundtrack. I think Greenwood's done a bunch of soundtracks for Paul Thomas Anderson movies, and it's really front and center in this. In a sense, it's a character in and of itself in the movie. So that's I don't know what this movie would be like if there weren't that soundtrack. It certainly be very different. Um, the action's great. There's a 20-minute sequence in the movie of just a highway chase, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautifully shot, and it is a car chase scene unlike any you've ever seen. So it's definitely worth seeing the movie just for that car chase. So I love that aspect of it. The action, the tension are are cut with brilliant comedic performances. I think DiCaprio um, really cuts the tension with some good levity in the movie. It's a Pynchonian. You come to a Pynchon project expecting that that's going to be in there. That there's going to be some seriousness, but there's some seriousness and some real high stakes, but that there's also going to be humor and levity, a good mix. I think Sean Penn's character, as terrible and disgraceful and disgusting as he is, even he has some pretty fun. There are some pretty amusing moments, some real black humor, some dark humor moments that come out of him here. I think, for my money, I think Sean Penn's performance in this really steals the show for me. He, like I said, he is the villain in the movie, and kind of like the novel, a a villain character in the novel, and I think Penn carries that off in every way that the book does. Um, so I think his performance really um, leaves nothing to be desired. I think he really does a great job. Um, so I love all these aspects. I love all of these aspects of the movie. I think the movie is worth watching. The 2 hours and 40 minutes or so of screen time went by really quickly for me. So I recommend the movie. But like I said, I don't recommend reading Vineland to get ready for the movie. Because if you do, like I did, you will there'll be parts where you're scratching your head a little bit. So now let me tell you why I say I liked the movie but didn't love the movie. So it's not that the movie didn't include enough of the plot elements or the set dressing from the novel. That's in there. The California setting is in the movie. There are like these zany bits from Pynchon. He has this in the book. He has this sisterhood of Konichi. Um, these female Japanese warriors who live off uh, kind of in reclusive. They're reclusive and they live away from society, and that's in the novel. And you get something like that in the movie. You have they're the Sisters of the Brave Beaver in the movie. It's obviously different. There isn't this whole Japanese aspect to it in the movie, um, which again, I'm not going to fault the movie for not including that. That's just a stylistic choice. Um, so the movie, not faulting it for leaving out uh, too much plot stuff. What I the issue I did have with the movie, one of the issues I had with the movie, is a theme that Pynchon is really after in the novel that I wish had a little more prominence in the movie is this sense in which rebellion or activism is maybe can be kind of hedonism in disguise. I'm not saying all activism is that way, but I think what Pynchon is at least exploring in the book. In the book, it's set in the 1980s, and he's looking back, and the characters are looking back on the rebellions and activism of the 60s. And so I'm not again faulting the movie for not being a period piece set in the 80s. Not faulting it for that. Um, but Pynchon is really interested in the novel in the way in which activism and rebellion are the pure motives that we can have for rebellion, but also maybe some of the not so pure motives we might have. The feeling it gives us, this sense of belonging, this almost kind of the maybe a like dopamine rush we get from activism. In the novel, he's really exploring the way in which now that these former activists from the 60s no longer have their activism, where have they funneled that? How have they funneled that creative energy? They funneled it into watching television and on sort of these hedonistic, kind of mindless pleasures that Pynchon really gets into in the novel. I mean, there's this whole group of people called the Thanatoids who are just sort of obsessed with television. And again, P.T. Anderson didn't have to get into that in the movie, but just all I'm saying is there is this complicated, multifaceted aspect to the activism of the 60s in the novel. Pynchon wants to idealize the activism of the 60s while also pointing out maybe it had some impure motives also. And that's for me was lacking in the movie. That aspect the complicated nature of activism is really not talked about in the movie. In fact, activism is mostly the activism in the movie, which it is a political movie, and I'm sure people will critique it on that ground. I'm not going to go there. But the activism that's in the movie and the activism and the sort of revolutionary spirit in the movie is really not critically examined in the movie at all, really. Um, Similarly, related to that, the the two characters of Bob Ferguson, as I said, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and the mother of his child, um, Perfidia Beverly Hills. Played by Teyana Taylor. She, there isn't really this. How do I put it? There isn't really this level of depth to them in the movie that there is in their analogs in the novel. What I mean by that is for both of them in the novel, Pynchon doesn't want us to forget that these two people are sellouts. They're on both sides of the law, right? They initially were in the 60s. They were these radical revolutionaries, and now they are sort of leaning on the government, the establishment, for just like sustenance and survival. Zoid Wheeler in the DiCaprio's character in the movie is getting these mental disability checks from the government, which is not talked about in the movie. Didn't have to be, but we find out in the novel that he's doing that for very self-serving reasons and to appease the government. He's doing it to kind of keep the FBI off his back, um, and so that he can keep custody of his daughter. Um, so the, that tension of I still have the embers of this revolutionary fervor in me, and yet I'm also on the other side. I'm also like kind of embracing the very thing I was rebelling against 20 years earlier. Um, that's kind of not in the movie. Um, the and I wish it were some of that complicated backstory with the characters, even if we didn't need to go into the backstory, but that we saw that tension or that multifaceted nature. Um, and really my last thought about the movie is I thought there could have been more opportunity for the daughter character. In the novel, her name is Prairie. In the movie, it's Willa, played by Chase Infinity. I mean, great performance for the what was needed in the movie. But I really thought this was going to be, when I saw the trailer, and I guess when I came to it with my Vineland expectations, I really thought this was going to be an opportunity for the movie to be her story. Because the novel, I think there's not really a main character in the novel, but if there were, it would be the Prairie Willa character. Really, what the novel's about, that I think the movie could have delved into a little more, is that it's Willa's story, really, and she's learning about her mother has abandoned her. That's a commonality in both the movie and the novel. Mother's abandoned her for other eh, pursuits, and throughout the book, Prairie Willa comes to learn more about her mother. And as she learns more about her mother, it's complicated. She's not just this heroic revolutionary figure. She's complicated. When in the novel she sort of directly participates or leads to the death of one of the people who was part of this revolution. And so she is by no means a hero. In fact, I mean, many, she is fairly unlikable in the novel. She's being charitable, though. She's complicated. In the mother figure is complicated in the novel. And as Prairie Willa comes to learn about her, she grows to have appreciation for her mother, but is also like kind of deeply like unsure about her mother. And that's not really explored in the movie. When the movie ends, I don't think I'm ruining anything here, but when the movie ends, um, the Willa character just sort of has uncritically taken up the mantle of her parents' activism, and that's not really what I think Pynchon is doing at all, really, in the novel. It's much more complicated than that. The Willa character has many more reservations about her parents, especially her mother, that are not really gotten into in the movie. And I wish they were. I think it was a real opportunity for Chase Infinity um, to to show off the range of acting ability that I just thought it was a missed opportunity for the movie. And so it's I still like the movie. I hope I didn't spend too much time on the negatives. I did really like the movie, but I thought it had taken that the movie had taken some of these ideas from the novel, like sort of former activists who are now no longer activists. It had taken those ideas, but had scrubbed out some of the complexity that I wish were a little more present in the movie. And I know Anderson is capable of doing this because I felt that that was there in Inherent Vice. That was the the complexity of character. I have no doubt that that could have been carried off here in this movie. It just the movie had other interests that um, I thought could have been the movie told a different story than the novel, and I wish some of those themes from the novel found their way into the movie a little more prominently. So, like the movie a lot. I'd even recommend going to see it. I'd recommend going to see it in the theater because it is a theater movie. So I'd recommend going to see it. It was a like for me, but not a love.